There's this incredible foundation to our legal system that most of us never really see. It's a kind of law that isn't made by politicians in a parliament, but by judges, one single case at a time. This is the story of the common law. So, when you hear the word law, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's probably politicians debating, writing up new rules. And yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. But what if I told you that's only half the picture? That a huge chunk of our legal code wasn't written by any government at all, but was actually built piece by piece over centuries of court cases. All right, so let's pull back that curtain. We're going to dive into this unwritten law, this living, breathing system that quietly shapes everything, from our most fundamental rights to our everyday arguments. So, the big question, what is the common law exactly? Well, the easiest way to think about it is this. It's law made by judges. Instead of a rule being passed by a legislature, it gets created when a judge has to make a tough call on a specific case. That ruling then becomes a kind of guide, what we call a precedent, for every other judge who has to deal with a similar problem down the line. Okay, the key to all of this is a little thing called precedent. And honestly, the best way to get it is to think of a family recipe. The very first person who makes that amazing dish, they set the standard, right? After that, pretty much everyone follows their recipe. Sure, they might tweak it here and there for new ingredients, but they always start with that original. It's the exact same in law. A totally new legal problem pops up, a judge has to make a decision, and boom, a new precedent is born. So where did this whole idea come from? You might be surprised to hear it's not some newfangled thing. Nope, we've got to go way back to medieval England, to a king who was just trying to get his kingdom in order. Imagine this. Before King Henry II, England was just a total legal mess. You had one set of rules in one village and completely different ones just down the road. It was chaos. So Henry had this big idea. He sent his own judges, they were called itinerant judges, to travel all over the country. And their one job was to apply the same, single, consistent set of rules everywhere they went. And the result? For the first time, there was a body of law that was common to the whole kingdom. And that, right there, is where the name comes from. Okay, so that's the history lesson. But how does this actually work in the real world? Like, how can one single court case literally create a new law? Well, let's look at a perfect example that shows this in action, the story of Burma Oil. Let's set the scene. The year is 1965, and this really strange case makes its way all the way up to the highest court in the land. It's got everything, a giant oil company, wartime destruction, and a really tough question that no written law had an answer for. So here was the situation the judges were staring at. You have Burma Oil, their facilities get blown up by the British Army during a war to keep them out of enemy hands. The Army did it using this really old power called the royal prerogative. Now, the company obviously wanted to be compensated. But here's the kicker. There was no act of parliament, no written law that said a thing about whether they should get paid or not. The rulebook was completely silent. The courts had to figure it out from scratch. So what happened? Well, the House of Lords, which was the top court back then, they made a huge call. They decided that yes, compensation could be paid. And just like that, bam, in that one decision, they didn't just solve a fight over money. They literally created a new legal principle. They set a precedent where nothing had existed before, filling in a gap that Parliament had left wide open. So what this all means is that we've really got two major sources of law working together, side by side. You've got the laws made by Parliament, and you have this constantly growing common law that's made by judges. How do they stack up? Think of it like this. On one hand, you've got statute law. That's the stuff written down by Parliament in big, formal documents. But on the other hand, you have the common law. It grows out of real court cases, changes over time, and, this is the super important part, it fills in all the gaps where the official rulebook is totally silent. They're not fighting each other, they're two parts of the same team, building our legal system together. Okay, so this is all pretty cool, right? A bit of history, a bit of legal theory, but so what? Why should you or I actually care about this today? What's its living legacy right now in our world? You see, common law isn't some dusty old thing in a museum. It's alive, it's active, it's happening right now. It's the reason we have certain fundamental rights that aren't even written down in any act of parliament. It's what defines those ancient powers, like the royal prerogative we just talked about. I mean, huge chunks of our law, like the whole concept of negligence, the idea that we have a duty not to be careless and hurt others, that's almost entirely built on common law. And maybe the most amazing part, It lets the law adapt on the fly to brand new problems. Think about things like AI or social media, long before politicians can get around to writing a new law. It's like the law's very own immune system, reacting and adapting in real time. And that really leaves us with a pretty wild thought to chew on. The story of common law is being written every single day, in courtrooms all over the country. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Could some judge today, in a case that seems small or obscure, make a ruling that hundreds of years from now, our descendants will look back on as a basic, fundamental right? With the common law, that's not just a possibility. That's exactly how the system is built.